Welcome to this player analysis video where we'll be taking a closer look at JOSKO GVARDIOL, Pep Guardiola's latest big money defensive target. We'll be combining stats, game footage and of course tactical knowledge to assess Guardiol's strengths and weaknesses and how he could possibly fit in at Manchester City and whether he'll be an upgrade ready to take the treble winners to the next level. But first things first, who exactly is JOSKO GVARDIOL? Guardiol is a 21-year-old Croatian central defender currently playing his football at RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga. In terms of height, he's 6'1" and he's left-footed, which immediately stands out as that's something that Pep Guardiola often likes to have in his left-sided centre-backs. Obviously, the likes of Aymeric Laporte and Nathan Ake are good examples of players that he's brought in previously to be able to do that. But earlier on in his Manchester City career, he often used Alexander Kolarov as the left-sided centre-back as well to try and get that balance in the back four. Now, why is it exactly that left-footed centre-backs are so important? I mean, clearly this is somewhat of a big thing because it even led to Tyrone Mings getting into the England squad somehow. So what exactly is it about being left-footed that's so special? Well, firstly, obviously it's less common, but more importantly, in terms of what it does on the pitch, it brings two key attributes. Now, these may be obvious to some of you. The first one is that in possession, you've got very different passing angles, and the second one is that when defending wider spaces, which is something that's being demanded more and more from centre-backs in the modern game, being left-footed if you're playing on the left is a little bit easier if you're then chasing back that way to try and make a tackle. So for those two reasons, both in and out of possession, being left-footed is a really important thing to have, or a really nice thing to have in your centre-backs on the left side. And you can see that in some of the other teams' signings in recent times as well, in particular the signing of Lisandro Martinez at Manchester United. So, with that in mind, how is Guardiola going to fit in at Manchester City? Where does he get into their 11? And why is being left-footed an advantage for that? Well, as we know, this is how City normally set up, or at least have done in recent seasons, in a 4-3-3 base formation. But we know as soon as they get the ball, it tends to change pretty quickly into a 3-2-2-3, with Stones stepping into midfield alongside Rodri as a double pivot. Then you get Gundogan and De Bruyne, or whoever's playing in midfield, stepping up to create this sort of two behind that front three, with the wingers holding the width, and obviously the incredible Erling Haaland through the middle. Now, what that leaves as a base for City when they're building up is this back three. So we've typically seen Ruben Dias playing in the centre of that back three. We've seen Kyle Walker and Manuel Akanji playing on the right side. On the left side, it's been either Nathan Ake or Manuel Akanji. But at times, when Akanji's been playing, the passing angles haven't been quite so good. So for me, that's one of the main reasons why Pep Guardiola wants to add JOSKO GVARDIOL, is that there's more depth on top of Nathan Ake. And to be fair, Guardiol's probably a better option than Nathan Ake as a starter. But the main reasons, again, why as a left footer it's so important for Guardiola to have that balance is that when they're building in this three, the centre-backs that are on that sort of the wider areas here are often just infield in the half spaces here. So they're likely to be pressed by the opposition winger. So if the opposition is going to be pressing in this sort of angle to try and cut off that pass to City's winger here, if you're a right-footed player, you try to make that pass to the winger from a centre-back position. That's going to be curved infield into the sort of space where the pressing player wants to go and attack the ball. Whereas if you're a left-footer, you can naturally curve that ball around the side, making it a little bit easier to play out of pressure. Also, as we tend to see when City step up the pitch a little bit higher, there'll be quite a lot of emphasis on the wide centre-backs in particular to actually step up, carry the ball forwards, but also at certain moments find balls through those lines there. Now that's much easier with a left footer because playing on that side, you're more naturally able to use your left foot to find these difficult passes, defence splitting, line breaking passes between the lines to certain players infield as well, which is something that Lisandro Martinez has done really well for Manchester United. But that is why Pep Guardiola is so keen on having a left-footed centre-back on the left side of that back three. Now, as we've touched on there, it's going to be really important for a Guardiola team that a left-footed centre-back, or any sort of centre-back, indeed any player in his system, is exceptional on the ball. So that's the first question of JOSKO GVARDIOL that we've got to answer. So, how good is JOSKO GVARDIOL on the ball? Well, the stats are a good place to start for a question like this, and what you've got on the right-hand side here of the screen is a chart showing the ball progression from centre-backs in the Bundesliga. So along the bottom, you've got the number of progressive passes per 90, and going up the graph, you've got the number of progressive carries. So you can see how each of the various centre-backs there contributes to getting the ball forward for their team by both passing, but also driving forward with the ball, carrying it out of defence. Now, in terms of JOSKO GVARDIOL, what you can see straight away is that GVARDIOL is over here. He's in quite clearly the top right corner of that graph, which is a pretty good place to be. What you can see straight away is, as well, is at the very top right, you've got Nico Schlotterbeck and Niklas Süle, the Dortmund central defenders. They're pretty much stand out in the Bundesliga as far as that's concerned, but you can see that Guardiola, in terms of his positioning, he's above the likes of Matthijs de Ligt there in terms of the amount that he does through carrying, slightly below for passing, but as you can see, he's very much in that elite group of Bundesliga defenders in terms of the amount of ball progression that he offers to his team through his possession play, both passing and through ball carrying. What this doesn't tell us, though, is what he does in game in terms of the way he likes to make his progression. Is he the sort of player that likes to go deep and pick the ball up off the goalkeeper, drive forward for long periods? Is he the sort of player that likes to sit in that back three and just pass the ball forwards? Well, this is where it becomes a little bit more nuanced for the way that Guardiola likes to play. So he's more than capable of sitting in that back three, as we've mentioned, for City, and sort of delivering great line-breaking passes from there. But he's also really good at driving forwards, but also positioning himself in the middle third of the pitch. Now, this is something that we see quite often with City at the moment, is that when they're playing and when they really get into their stride in certain moments of the game, what you see, if we bring up the tactics board here, is you see them get higher and higher up the pitch, and what you tend to see is that the centre-backs actually end up 10 to 15 yards inside the opposition's half, to a point where actually they end up being the options if City want to recycle the ball and transfer it from side to side. So they need to be able to not just sort of deliver passes forward from the back, but they also need to be very, very capable of disrupting the opposition's block shape from well inside the opposition half, which is something that Guardiola excels in. Indeed, in the middle third, he's one of the best centre-backs I've seen in terms of, on both feet, being able to operate in, sometimes in tight areas, and deliver passes with his right foot, with his left foot, and also passes beyond the defence as well in terms of creating possible goal-scoring opportunities. So Guardiola is able to excel in this role here, where he's a little bit deeper and just looking for line-breaking passes. He's able to carry the ball up the pitch, but he's also very capable of getting really, really high up the pitch, even involved in terms of threatening the opposition's last line at certain moments and finding balls that can create shots, can create possibly even goals for Manchester City. So I think in terms of what Guardiola brings in possession, he's an all-around fantastic player, very comfortable on both his left foot and also his right foot, comfortable with short passing and long passing, and he's capable as well in terms of carrying the ball forward as well as passing the ball forward. So he's a player that, in the way that John Stones has often stepped into midfield for City this season, possibly Guardiola can do something similar next season if they opt to sort of make it more fluid in terms of who goes into, who steps into midfield, if Guardiola's playing maybe as the central centre-back. But he can also play as the left-sided one, stepping as high as he possibly needs to. He is fantastic in possession. Now, it's all very well being brilliant in possession, but one thing that Guardiola has seen this season in the way that his team's evolved is that he now prefers to use three pure defenders at the back if he's building with a back three. So whereas previously, if he was building with a back three, maybe one of the fullbacks inverts, João Cancelo, for example, maybe Alexander Zinchenko in previous seasons as well, now he prefers to have that solid base of three players that are out-and-out defenders. In those wider roles, and sort of the wide centre-backs there's no semblance really of them being fullbacks, unless, I mean, you can argue with Kyle Walker, but the emphasis primarily is players that are quick, they're strong, and they're incredibly good 1v1 in the duel. So rather than having fullbacks that are traditionally a little bit weaker defensively, maybe a little bit quicker, a little bit skinnier, fly forward quite a lot, Guardiola now has gone for pure out-and-out defenders in that back three, and that's the solid base that he wants to build his team from. So, in terms of Guardiola's responsibilities, we've discussed how good he is in possession, but obviously, if you're in this back three here, particularly on the left side here, he's going to be covering large amounts of space. So, in terms of his physical capabilities, in terms of his defensive side of the game, how good actually is he? Well, physically, first of all, he's very quick, which is a really important trait when you're dealing with covering large spaces, large areas of the pitch. He's pretty good with using his body, but if there is a weakness in his game, it's probably his aerial duels. Now, if he was playing as the central centre-back, that could be a little bit of an issue because you're likely to be dealing with a sort of big opposition striker quite a lot in the Premier League, although maybe less than sort of 5-10 years ago. However, as a wide centre-back there, typically the players that he'll be contesting aerial duels with will be sort of second strikers or inside forwards, wingers. Those type of players tend to be a little bit smaller, so Guardiola should be able to dominate those type of players in the air all the time, in a similar way to the way Nathan Ake has this season under Guardiola. So in terms of his defensive side of the game, his role here in this situation is mainly going to be on turnovers. So when the opposition give the ball away and City win it back, if there's a long ball downfield, that's a situation where Guardiola might find himself contesting a 1v1 duel, and in those situations, him being left-footed would be quite useful to come out to the wing and deal with those balls, just clearing it out of play or even tackling and restarting an attack himself. The other thing you'll need to do, obviously, in those sort of situations as well, is that if the opposition striker does choose to go onto Guardiola, he'll have to contest those duels, try to win the ball back and be aggressive and restart attacks as well. That way, he's more than capable of doing all of that at a very good standard. What we're going to look at now is some game footage here. So this is a situation that Guardiola's likely to be faced with quite a lot when he joins Manchester City, if he joins Manchester City, and that is defending in the wide spaces. Obviously with City playing in the back three as they do, when they lose the ball on transition, Guardiola's likely to be dealing with a large area of the pitch, those wide channels on transitions, and so he's likely to be faced with wingers running into those spaces quite a lot. So I think what was really important here was to highlight his defensive fundamentals and how that translates to this particular sort of situation. So what you've got here is you've got Guardiola there in the white there for Croatia. You've got a winger up there on the ball. You've got two players from the opposition team running forward, sprinting to try and get in the box, get on the end of a cross. You've got two Croatian players recovering. That's important as well in the situation. But the most important thing here is that you can see from the way the wing is positioned and what he's sort of his where he's looking, that where he really wants to go is down the line and get a ball into one of those two Croatian players that's advancing. So that's the context. That's the overall situation. That is what's going on in this particular moment of the game. So if we clear that, look at the next image, what you can see is obviously the first thing, the most important thing you've got to do as a defender in the situation is get within 5 yards of the player trying to deal with quite quickly. You've got to close down the space as best you possibly can. You can see Guardiola's done that really well, but what's impressive here is that he's also done the next bit really, really well also. So it's all very well getting within the sort of 4 or 5 yards as he's done there. You can see that from his distance is there, but what he's done in terms of the next bit is really crucial, and that's the difference between an average defender, maybe the likes of Joao Cancelo. He'd be sprinting out all the way, probably dive in and get beaten, and that's the difference between that sort of player and the elite players. Casemiro is fantastic at doing this. When you get to that distance of about 5 yards away, you've got to drop your body shape, get on your toes, you've got to be low to the ground, ready to react so that you're in control of the situation rather than being at the mercy of what the winger does. So Guardiola in this situation has done a really good job of doing that. He's got himself lower down, he's got his hands behind his back. Admittedly, that's more of a recent thing to deal with the changes in the handball laws than it is a particular defending trait, but needs must, I guess, with the current handball situation. So the important bit here is you can see his body shape. He got really quickly out to the winger as quick as he could, and once he's got within 5 yards, he's changed his body shape to try and dictate the situation and make sure that he's in control rather than the winger being in control. So in terms of defensive fundamentals, he's done the first bit absolutely brilliantly, and that's going to be really important in terms of how he approaches these situations in the Premier League. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think he will be a success, is that the basic fundamentals are right. He's not just been getting lucky with outcomes, he's doing the basic things right. If you look at the next image here in the sequence, what you can see now is that, again, you can see he's low to the ground. If you look at his body position, his body shape there. Sorry, I think the annotations are slightly not calibrated correctly, so if it's annoying you, my apologies. But you can see he's lower to the ground, hands behind his back still. He's sort of moved himself, he's exaggerated it a little bit, so he's moved himself to block off the line so that the winger can't really come down the line, and he's forced him instead to go back inside. Now, because he's got low to the ground, he's slowed the situation down crucially. What he's allowed is his two teammates here, I'll just underline that one to save the ring being in the wrong place. He's allowed them to get back into position to deal with, crucially, this number 20 who's getting into the box, and also this other player here who's getting into the box as well. So what he's done is he's turned it from a situation where the winger's trying to get round him and pull that ball back to one of these two players coming into the box, into a situation now where he's forcing the winger back inside. He's blocked off where the winger wants to go, so he's forcing the winger to where he doesn't want to go, somewhere he's weaker, but also the area where his two teammates have recovered into, and also an area where he's least likely to be able to threaten the Croatian goal. So in terms of fundamentals, his first step was sprinting out quickly, get within 5 yards. Second step, change his body shape, get low to the ground, sort himself out so that he's able to deal with the situation. Third step here is slightly exaggerated to force the winger where he wants him to go, not where the winger wants to go. So he's dictated that situation. Now, if we roll the sequence on a little bit to the next image here, What you can see is by this point, he's forced the winger to turn back in towards his own goal. You can see that number 20 is being tracked by the Croatian player that's run back into the box. You've got Luka Modric coming back into the picture as well, defensively trying to help out. So you can see from that just how important the effect of Guardiola slowing down the play is in terms of letting everybody else come back into the picture. You can see the wingers facing, now running back to where he doesn't want to go, and he's got Brozovic, I think that is, there, ready to help out as well. So he's allowed other players to come back into the picture. You can see the impact of what Guardiola's done there. The next image, you can see is really quickly, he's forced the winger into indecision because he's gone somewhere he didn't want to go. He's having to pick his head up, think about where he wants to go next. And in that time, Guardiola's quickly turned around. He's shown really good explosive power to get his foot in there. And the image you see here, the ball being a bit further away from the winger, is because Guardiola's got his foot in by this moment and he's taken the ball off the winger. The final image you see is, of course, for good measure. He goes through the winger, knocks him over. Winger won't want to run at him again after that for a few minutes. So I think the other important bit to note is he's, rather than just tackling it, getting it out of play, he's given it to a Croatian player in this situation so they're able to build another attack. So the key points there are the fundamentals of Guardiola in those ground duel situations. He'll be asked quite a lot whilst at Manchester City, if he does join, to be dealing with those situations where he's dealing with 1v1 situations against a winger in large areas of the pitch. He's going to need to be able to do what he's done here in terms of showing the basic fundamentals, getting out quickly, then dropping his body position so he can dictate the duel, and then using this sort of a combination of techniques to try and delay the situation as much as possible to let other teammates get back into position on transition. You can see that City players are really good at that, sprinting back when they lose the ball, so they're all behind the ball within a couple of seconds. That'll be really helpful. But then also Guardiola's strong explosive power to be able to lunge in, get the ball away and turn it back to a Croatian player. So as we've highlighted so far in this video, Guardiola's major strengths are his play in possession on both feet. Defensively, he's fantastic at dealing with situations in wide spaces, dictating duels, ground duels in particular, but it would be remiss of us not to highlight his weaknesses as well at the same time. So, weakness-wise, what you've got, the two main weaknesses Guardiola's got. Number one is aerial duels. Now, in this situation, he's not that good. 6'1" isn't the tallest for a Premier League quality defender. There's plenty that are obviously bigger than that, but also plenty, well, not plenty, but there's a few like Lisandro Martinez that are shorter than that. Where Guardiola's different, though, is Martinez is excellent at judging the flight of a ball, reacting accordingly, and getting himself in position. Guardiola's not quite as good at judging the flight of the ball in terms of defensive situations, so he struggles a little bit to dominate those duels in the same way. However, if he's playing on one side of a back three, which he'll mostly be doing for City, that's not as much of a problem because he's more likely to be coming up against shorter wingers who aren't quite as physical rather than big strikers in that situation. So that's not too much of a problem. And Guardiola's second weakness, the only other thing to mention really, is his possession play. At times he can lose the ball a bit, probably to be expected with a young player taking so many risks in terms of his ball progression, but that could be an issue with City, although I think Guardiola will coach that out of him quite quickly. So those are Guardiola's two weaknesses. As you can see, though, his profile is mainly a fantastic fit for City. He's got a lot of brilliant strengths that I'm sure will take City to the next level. For the video, that's pretty much it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Drop a like if you can and subscribe if you're new around here. If not, please do leave me a comment and let me know what you thought of the video down below. See you guys again very soon for another player analysis video. Cheers for watching. Goodbye.